Hi, welcome to the Corner of Knit and Tea, episode 17. My name is Laura, and I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Twitter and Instagram. I blog over at the Corner of Knit and Tea, and that's where this episode and every episode's show notes will be. And I have an Etsy store at the Stash Buckler Adventures in Yarn. We also have a Ravelry group, which is called the Corner of Knit and Tea, so come on over and check us out. There is currently a gift knit-along going on. Basically, any gift that you knit between, I believe I started it November 12th and December 31st, is eligible. You post a photo of the finished object. You can post as many times as you have finished objects, and the only rule is that it needs to be something for someone other than yourself. We have some great prizes for that, some Ravelry patterns, some yarn, even a skein of wool mice, so come over to the group and check us out and enter for things that I assume you're already knitting for the holidays. So hi, welcome back. We are back to a little bit of a normal schedule. I'm sorry that I did not record last weekend. We got home late Sunday and I needed to do a whole bunch of laundry and grocery shopping, and we went back to work and we had some work done on the house this week. So it's been a little bit of a crazy week and I just haven't gotten back to sit down and podcast again. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. I had a blast visiting Kim and Sam in Tempe and doing a little bit of yarn tourism, some of which you'll see here today. And it was a really, really great trip. I enjoyed spending time with my family and we had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you had a wonderful holiday if you celebrate. And if not, I hope you've had a wonderful couple weeks. And let's get back into it. So today I am sipping in a wonderful mug that was a gift from Sam of Come Knit With Us. Dear Karma, I have a list of people you missed. Perfect for me. And I am sipping, it is called Almond Sugar Cookie Tea. It is from Liz, who was also in the last podcast. And the reason it's in a Ziploc baggie is they have a great tea store down there. It's called Tea Time Scottsdale. And unfortunately, because of the hours and the short time that we had in Tempe, we didn't get to make it to the tea store. So Liz said that she brought the tea store to me. So this is one of the things that she brought. It's called the Almond Sugar Cookie. And I also wanted to say, for those of you who follow Knitting Den Denise, she is wearing crazy Christmas hats this month and dressing up for Christmas. And I am not quite there. I don't have any crazy Christmas hats and I only have one Christmas shirt. But what I thought was that I would sip some holiday teas. And while this one is not strictly a holiday tea, I have several lined up for the next couple podcasts. Almond Sugar Cookie sounds like it could be a Christmas tea. So I'm in the Christmas spirit while I'm drinking Christmas tea or holiday inspired teas and meeting you. So yes, Almond Sugar Cookie in my mug from Sam, and we'll do a little sippy sippy. Very good. Very yummy. I know that there are big slices of almonds in there. I also think that this has some rooibos in there, but it's not a full rooibos tea because it looked like there was some black tea in there. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of ingredients, but it is tasty. And actually, I'll see if I can show you. It is awful pretty. Let me see if I can show you. It's got some red leaves and yeah, you can see. It's a really pretty tea. So this is still a little bit of like being in Tempe. I miss the girls. It was so much fun to meet you, and thank you for the wonderful gifts and for showing me a wonderful time. Double sippy, why not? So let's move on to other things. What I'm wearing also doubles as a finished object. I finished my Groovy, which is a shawl by Jumper Cables Knitting. This is a Twisted Fiber Arts Evolution. It's on her Ariel base, which is Superwash Merino, and the colorway is Velvet. And the lighting is a little weird today because it's kind of gloomy outside, and I'm waiting for it to kind of pink back up. There we go. So that is that shawl. I'm wearing it kind of like a kerchief. I'm super happy with it. I loved knitting. It was a little bit boring, but I loved the final product, and the last bit was kind of fun because the colors changed pretty quickly even though the rows were long. So I really enjoyed that one. I kind of knit this as my sock club entry for last month. I did not do socks because I was busy doing gifts and all kinds of other things, but this is out of sock weight yarn, and so I went ahead and sort of counted it as my finished sock club for November. So that is kind of a what I'm wearing, and sort of dovetails into knitting and finished objects. I have quite a few finished objects that I won't be able to show you today because they are already either delivered or en route. I don't know if you followed my Instagram feed, and I posted some of these on there. I knit several hats. I have a friend who works for a local school district, a local school that is for underserved kids in the area, and she mentioned that kids were coming to school without hats and warm weather gear, and in Kansas, not so much right now, but in January and February that will really be a big problem. So I took a whole bunch of balls of superwash wool and acrylics and a variety of things from my stash, and I knit several hats. I used the Barley pattern by Tin Can Knits, and I used the Turn a Square pattern by Jared Flood, and I sized them down a little bit. The Barley hat comes in kids sizes. The Turn a Square hat does not, but I sized it down just a little bit. And so I knit, I believe, 4 of those, and those have actually already been delivered, but there are pictures in my Instagram feed. I also knit a scarf for the Red Scarf Project, which, if you don't know what it is sort of a tag on to children who have been in the foster care system. At 18, they basically age out of the system, and either orphans or those who have been removed from their homes for a variety of reasons. Many of them go on to go to college, do other things, and the Red Scarf Project is sort of for them. What they do is they put together a package each year around Valentine's Day, and they like to include a red scarf, so they ask for donations from knitters. And they send these packages out to kids who have aged out of the foster care system. So I had some red yarn in the stash, and I decided to go ahead and knit one up. It is almost too late to contribute. I'm trying to think. There are notes on my projects page. You'll see the red scarf on Ravelry. They accept donations, I believe, between November 1st and December 15th every year. They don't have storage space for other times during the year, so there's sort of like a set window when you can send them scarves, and then they distribute them the following February. But that has already been put in the mail, so I don't have that to show you. But I do like doing some charity knitting, particularly around the holidays. It reminds me kind of the spirit of giving to those who are less fortunate than us, and you can do a lot of different things. You can give time, you can give money, you can donate food. There are so many different things to do, and my big thing is that I'm a knitter, so if I can knit something warm to be distributed to someone to make them feel loved, I am all about that. So I enjoyed doing some of those things. Like I said, unfortunately, I don't have them to show you because I have tried to be really good about getting them out and to their scheduled donation. Destination, not donation. So I do have one finished object, or I guess 2 if you count this as number 1. The last Christmas gift that I needed to knit when I came home was some felted clogs for my husband. It's a pattern from Fiber Trends, and this is kind of a funny story. So when we first started dating, which was 10 years ago, I spent a first Christmas with my husband, and I wanted to make him a little something, so I made him some felted clogs. And I don't know whether I wasn't specific or he didn't ask, or I'm willing to bet it's some combination of both, but we did not discuss the care of felted clogs. And if you have made anything with felted fabric, you know that first you knit something, and to felt it, you agitate it in hot water, and the fibers open up and sort of densely mat together, and the item itself shrinks a little bit in size, and then it's kind of a dense fabric that can be shaped and molded how you want it to be. And the clogs have a double sole, so they're just really a nice thick slipper. And I don't know if you haven't felted before, it's kind of the same thing as when you put a wool sweater in the wash and the dryer and it shrinks to an unmanageable size and the fabric gets really tough. And I hope you've never done that, but that in essence is felting. So I made my husband these felted slippers and he wore them a few times, and then he decided they needed to be washed and he stuck them in the washer, which was fine because once they've been washed and agitated, it's unlikely that too much else will happen. But then he stuck them in the dryer and they shrunk a whole bunch more. And as a result, I have had some lovely clogs in my size to wear for years now. Yes, that's right. He felted one of the first presents that I gave him, made them into a size that he couldn't wear them anymore. And I took them back because they're perfectly good and I can wear them. So I have been wearing them for years and enjoying them. So earlier this year, he asked if he could have another pair. And as we've now been married about 6.5 years and we've been together 10 years, I said, you know what? Sure. So he's been sort of asking me over the last couple months when he might get them as the weather turns cooler, and I had decided that I was going to knit him a pair for Christmas. Also because it kind of amuses me that I can put slippers in his stocking. Shoes inside socks. That makes me laugh. I don't know why. Anyway, so I finished those this week, and I'm sort of calling these a finished object even though they're not finished because, as you might notice, they are enormous. They're enormous and they're not felted yet, but all the knitting is done and all the ends have been woven in. I guess I switched this year. I knit the first sole in the green like the regular, and then the bottom is a red sole. So they look just a smidge different, and I used a slightly different yarn. This is Valley Yarns Northampton. Which, as you know, I love. The pattern calls for Cascade 220, but I think Northampton is just a little bit rounder and fuller, and I really like doing that. These are basically you hold 2 strands together and you knit on size 13s. You knit them huge, although these are the men's medium size, and these will be felted, and then I will show them to you next week when they're completely done. They'll look something like what I just showed you off my foot, and they will be ready for him for a Christmas present. So that is actually the last Christmas present done, which is kind of amazing. And it also, I looked at all of my notes and all of my lists, because as you know, I'm kind of a list person, and I realized I don't have any more gift knitting. Like, I normally have a list of babies who are going to be born, birthdays, holidays, various things. Nothing's coming up until March or April next year, and even then I don't have any hard requirements for knitting. No babies. I can do some stuff for birthdays if I want, and I try and alternate sort of a lot of times between purchasing something and making something rather than making something every single year. And I believe it's my purchase year, so I really have nothing left that I have to knit, which is kind of amazing because I am always knitting something for a gift or for someone else. And now I've got this huge list of things that I have always wanted to knit for me, and I barely know where to start. So I have started with 2 projects, which I'm about to show you, and then I'll talk to you about a few of the other things that I'm considering. So the first thing, and this also goes on with a little bit of stash enhancement, which is in my mustache bag from Kim. When I traveled to Los Angeles, well, a little backstory. When I lived in Los Angeles, which at this point was coming up on 7 years ago, I worked in a yarn store there on some nights and weekends, and the yarn store unfortunately closed shortly after I moved, but one of the women who ran the store has actually now opened a new store. So I went to visit it during my trip, and I actually also met another knitting friend there, which was fabulous. And then we went to a great Mexican place for lunch, and it was just wonderful. It was a little bit of being back in LA. They say you can't go home again, and I will say that that's pretty true. Even though I was born and raised in LA and I lived there for a long time as an adult, when I go back, it's not quite home anymore. Kansas City has really become my home. My family, my husband is here. Our house is here. I have a wonderful, wonderful group of knitting friends who we have met almost every Wednesday night for the last 7 years, And as much as I love LA, it's not really home anymore. That said, when I go to visit my parents and go to a knitting store and meet up with some friends and eat at some restaurants that I love, I get little glimpses of what home was, and it's kind of a really nice memory and a really nice thing to do. So that was a little trip down memory lane. We'll go back now. When I went to the yarn store, I was looking for something that I couldn't get at home. That's how I like to sort of tourist shop. Either a local fiber artist that I can't get at home or just something that I haven't seen before. And the yarn store owner came in and she and I had a good chat, and she took me around the store. And one of the things I'm most impressed with about the store, which is the Knitting Tree Los Angeles. It's located in Culver City, so if any of you are near Los Angeles, you should definitely give it a try. One of the things that she showed me, one of the things that I really like about their store is that they have a whole variety of yarns. They have workhorse yarns, they have fancy yarns, they had a huge shipment of Madeline Tosh, and then they have all kinds of smaller indie yarns, different materials. I saw linen, I saw cotton, I saw all kinds of different things. Well, one of the things that Annette, who is the owner, showed me was this new line that they had gotten in from Woolfolk. And Woolfolk is a company, I believe it's based out of South America. They source their yarn from the Patagonia area. And it is absolutely amazing. I'm trying to see if you can see. The construction of the yarn is actually kind of a cable. Looks almost like a shoelace, sort of. And it makes it exceptionally light and fluffy and also super, super warm. And this is a merino, but it is so soft, I swear it feels like cashmere. And it comes in it comes in 12 colors, most of which are gradients. So there are several grays kind of over a palette, there are several tans over a palette, there are several blues over a palette. And she showed me this and I absolutely could not resist. This is an example of great marketing by a yarn store. What they had done is they had taken 12 skeins, or at least the number of skeins, one of each color that they had, and they had thrown it on the knitting machine and knit a wide piece of fabric in huge color blocks from each skein. Like they knit one skein and then they added another skein and then they added another skein, and they had this huge piece of fabric that was all the colors that they had, and they had draped it over a mannequin like a scarf. And immediately I was like, I want one of those. So I picked a couple skeins in the colors that I wanted, which were these 3 colors. I got the grays, and this is like silver gray. I think this one's called dove gray, and then this one's called raven. So this one's actually a black. And I picked 3 skeins and was like, that's it, I'm gonna do a color block scarf. So I have started and I've been knitting on it for the last week. And I just last night at the movies added the second section. I did a bit of a garter border, and I've been doing 2 garter stitches at each edge, although that doesn't seem to keep it from curling. But so this is the progress on my scarf so far, and actually I did not think I would get quite as far as I did with the first skein. So partway through the first skein I kind of panicked and thought, wow, this is not going to be nearly as long as I want this, so I went and bought a few more skeins. So basically what I have now is I have the light, and then I have the medium, and then I have the dark, and then I have another medium and another light, so that I could make basically 5 color blocks. And this is just a absolutely mindless project. It's just stockinette with the exception of the couple garter stitches at the edge. And I've been calling this my floofy scarf because it is squishy and soft, and I cannot wait to wear it. And I might possibly have ordered 1 extra skein so that I can make a hat to go with it with a big pom-pom. So that is where I'm at. They advertise this yarn as a worsted weight. It's called, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it is called Far. Let me see if I can, here. It is called Far with, and I don't even know what that's called over the A, the little mark over it. and it is 142 yards. I really think it knits up a little bit more like an Aran. They suggest US 5 to 8 needles, and say it'll get 4 stitches to the inch, which I think reads more of an Aran or bordering on a bulky weight. And I am doing this scarf on size 9s, and I am super happy. I suppose if I were knitting a sweater, I might do it just a little bit, maybe go down 1 needle size to make it a little thicker. But for a scarf, I wanted plenty of air pockets, plenty of things to keep me warm. So that is the project that I'm working on right now, and the yarn is just a delight to work with. I am loving this. So that was a little bit of my yarn tourism in Los Angeles. Like I said, I was really motivated to cast on right away when I got home. So I've been working on that. I didn't start socks for this month yet, so this has been coming with me to the office as my lunchtime knitting project because it's so easy. And like I said, I took it to the movies last night. So that's project number 1. Project number 2 actually is something that I talked about before I left. I decided that I wanted to knit a shawl out of some Malabrigo lace that I had. Several episodes ago, I showed you the Shoalwater shawl, which was out of Malabrigo lace, and it's 3 skeins and it's huge, and I love it for the winter because I just wrap it all around me and it keeps me so warm and it is so soft. And I kind of wanted to do the same thing, but I didn't want to knit the same pattern again, so I went ahead and found a different pattern. So the pattern that I'm knitting is the Alina shawl, and it doesn't have a name on it. Hang on just a second, let me see if I can find it. It is by Lanka Comero. Lankakomero, and the pattern is the Alina shawl. And basically it is just a triangle, mostly stockinette with some yarn over kind of eyelet rows, and then it's got this really neat lace border. So I cast on this week. I have 3 skeins of Malabrigo lace in the colorway Teal Feather. And so far I've just been into the stockinette section with the yarn overs. Sorry, just trying to get this to a place where I can show you. So it is knitting up wonderfully. The yarn is super soft. I am super, super happy about it. And all I have left to decide is the pattern calls for, I want to say 600 or 700 yards, and I have 1200 yards. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to upsize the pattern based on the fact that I have more yarn and how would be the best way to do that. So I suspect I'll probably keep knitting until till I run out of the second ball and then use the third ball for the lace edging, but that might make it too big, so I'm just going to have to keep an eye on it and kind of make a judgment call when I think it's time to start the lace edging, but I may knit this bigger than the pattern calls for. So that is the Alina shawl. And I'm sure you'll see some progress on that in the coming weeks because this is also a joy to knit on. I just love this, and Malabrigo lace might be my boyfriend because I love Malabrigo lace. It is just the softest ever. Now, I will tell you, I love Malabrigo lace, as you might have gathered. It has the tendency to felt or full a little bit, and it definitely did in the other shawl that I knit. So I would say that I am unlikely to ever use Malabrigo lace for a garment because I don't think I would want that in a garment. In a shawl, however, I don't mind if it folds a little bit or if it felts a little bit together because it just makes it that much warmer, and it's not, I don't want to say that it felt the way that the slippers felt. I want to say it kind of rubbed and it becomes a little fluffier and the individual strands a little less distinct, but in a shawl it doesn't bother me. I don't even know how to describe it exactly. To me, it just makes the fabric a little bit denser and it makes it that much warmer. And again, when you're dealing with something like lace or something this soft and you have a lot of open pockets where air can get in, your body warms the air in those pockets and it will keep you warmer. So I don't really have a problem with it for this. I would hesitate to use Malabrigo lace for something like maybe a featherweight cardigan or something where there's going to be a ton of rubbing and you might want to wash it fairly frequently, because I think that would just be disappointing. But in a shawl, and knowing the properties and how it will come out, I actually really select it for that because I really enjoy that. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but there you go. So those are my knitting projects, and I'm left to contemplate what else I want to do. I haven't decided if I'm going to start a pair of socks. I do have a very special skein of sock yarn that was given to me by a friend recently, and I told her that was going to be the next thing on the needles. So that may end up getting wound up this week and started. And then the other thing is, because I'm a little crazy, but you already knew that, we put up our Christmas tree yesterday, and my husband said to me, "We don't have a tree skirt." And I said, "I know, usually I have a black sheet, and usually I just drape it down around the bottom of the tree and it looks just fine." And then I started thinking, what if I knit a Christmas tree skirt? I think you know where this is going. So last night I was on Ravelry looking for patterns of Christmas tree skirts, and they are a few pages long, and for the most part I wasn't super jazzed about any of them. A lot of them are a little bit hokey or in a lot of different colors, and I wasn't really sure that I wanted it to be quite the focal piece or quite so loud as that. And then about 2/3 of the way down the second page, it suggested Jared Flood's adaptation of the Hemlock Ring. And I thought, that's what I want. I've been wanting to knit that forever. And his suggestion with the Hemlock Ring, because he really prefers kind of chunky, little bit rustic knits, he usually, the Hemlock Ring pattern calls for Cascade Eco Wool, which is what he uses to sort of create a chunky yet lacy pattern. And that would be substantial enough for a Christmas tree skirt. And so I immediately started looking for Cascade Eco Wool. And then my husband said, you know, we're just going to use this a few times a year. It doesn't really need to be washable. It doesn't really need to be super special. What would you think about just going to Michael's or Joann's and seeing what they have there? So cue today, after I finished recording the podcast, we are going out to look for yarn for a Christmas tree skirt. Now, I have no idea if I'll finish it for this year, and if I don't, that's fine. But apparently now I'm going to try and knit a Christmas tree skirt for Christmas. So yes, I'm a little crazy. Of course, it is bulky yarn, and it will, my guess is it'll be about 500 yards, so it won't be impossible, but I would have to put some of these other projects aside. So I just haven't decided exactly what I'm gonna do. And then the other thing is that the Hemlock Ring blanket is knit completely in the round. So I have to decide if I'm going to either knit it back and forth, basically cast on but knit it back and forth so it's got an open edge to kind of put around the Christmas tree. Or the other thing that I've tried to decide is if I'm just going to skip some of the early stitches so that it'll have a hole about this size in the middle, and then I could just put it over the tree stand before I put the tree in. So I have to decide about that. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. And it looks like I might be knitting a tree skirt. So, oh my goodness, we are at 28 minutes and I still haven't even started spinning, or there's a question at the end. So let's keep going. My spinning time was a lot less because we were traveling. I did take the spindle with me and I showed you my progress, and actually I never got back to it. So that is still on the spindle. It has not been wound off. It has not been plied. I haven't even started anything else. I just got busy playing with the baby and having a good time, and I just didn't get back to it, and I did a bunch of knitting. Before I left, I showed you fiber that was on my wheel. It was fiber that I had dyed. It was kind of a brown, and it had some red and some fuchsia, and I started calling it chestnut cherry because chestnut and cherry were two of the colors that I had used to dye it. And I finished the first half of the fiber, as you recall, or maybe you don't. It was 8 ounces of fiber, but I finished the first 4 ounces and plied it up, and it is dry and squishy. It is merino, and it is kind of a tan with red pops, and I actually really like it, and it sort of reminds me of the holidays. I don't know, it makes me think of Rudolph, really, because it's brown with his red nose. and kind of those classic Christmas colors of that kind of chestnut or cocoa brown and some red. So that is the first one finished. My guess is it is about, it's probably between 300 and 350 yards. I haven't done the math yet. I need to measure and weigh. And actually this one will be going in the shop this evening. So if you are interested, it is here. I'm also spinning up the second half. So there will be that as well if you needed something for a larger project. So that is what I finished. At the beginning of this year, I set a goal that I wanted to spin 52 braids in 2014, which was basically a braid a week, about 4 ounces per week. And I am getting close. I will say some of the quantities that I've spun have been larger than 4 ounces, so I am actually really close to 13 pounds, even if I'm not close to, or even if I'm not quite at the 52 spins. But this was 49, so I have 3 more spins and I will have made my goal of 52 spins. And actually I'm getting, because a few of them were larger, I might, if I do a lot of spinning this month, hit 14 pounds this year, which is absolutely freaking amazing. I cannot believe I've spun that much, and it was absolutely a great goal to make and keep, and I am very much thinking about doing it again next year. So we'll have to see, but I will show you the fiber that I'm going to spin next. This is from Sweet Georgia. It's Superwash Merino, and it's in a colorway of hers that I have always, always, always loved. It is fondant, and it is browns and turquoises and pinks. And then maybe a little bit of purple where the pink and the blue meet. So this is going to be next up on my wheel, and I cannot wait to see what it looks like. I think it's actually a perfect spin for the holiday season. It looks like candy. So that is what's next on my wheel. That almost brings us to the end, but I wanted to do, when I posted for the 250 member giveaway, and everybody commented, a bunch of people asked questions. And I wanted to sort of address some of those questions over the next few podcasts and talk a little bit about myself, because most of them were about me. So one of the questions asked by Liz and Jezebel69, both of them asked me how I learned to spin. So if we back up quite a bit, probably 8 or 9 years ago when I was working in the yarn store in Los Angeles, they had a class on a Sunday that was a learn to spin class. And so I bought some supplies. I bought a beautiful, beautiful spindle, which I have right here. It is a Kundert spindle, and it is to this day still probably my favorite spindle that I have had. I do have a collection of spindles, and some of them are absolutely beautiful. This may just be my favorite utilitarian tool. It is, I want to say, it's either 42 or 52 grams. So it's a slightly heavier spindle, but it's a good beginning weight. Particularly when you're not looking to spin super, super fine. I love the wood, and he has a variety of different patterns. And the price point, I believe I paid around $35, and I believe most of his spindles are between $35 and $45. So it's a good way to get a good quality tool, but not break the bank for it, because you certainly can buy really, really expensive spindles. So I bought a spindle and I bought some fiber, and I went to this spinning class. And it was a couple hours long. They taught us how to draft the fiber. They taught us how to spin on the spindle. And then at a certain point when we had spun up enough, they taught us how to wind it off and how to Andean ply, which although it's a slightly different method of winding the yarn over your fingers, it's basically the same thing as winding into a center pole ball and plying from the inside and the outside of the ball at the same time. The effect is the same. Basically, you ply the entire amount of yarn that you have. I will say that the first fiber that I bought was totally inappropriate for this class. I bought a beautiful merino silk, and I was going to look for the yarn that I made, but I can't find it. So I will, if I find it, I will bring it to another episode. It looks like Thick and Thin boat rope. But merino silk is very slippery and slick and really not a good fiber to start with. The upshot of the situation is that I was super, super frustrated, and I decided I wasn't any good at spinning and there would be no more spinning. So I packed the fiber and the spindle away and pretty much forgot about them for a couple of years. In May of 2010, a friend of mine on Ravelry, and actually someone I've met several times in real life, asked me to come and co-moderate a forum that she ran. And it was a spinning and dyeing forum. And I said to her, but I'm not a spinner. And she said, it doesn't matter, you're a moderator. And also, you're not a spinner yet. And yeah. So I went over and I started to moderate, and within a few weeks of being welcomed as a moderator, someone sent me a braid of fiber. And I thought, well, now that's a pretty pickle, isn't it? And I went and I dug out my spindle and I said, you know what? I'm going to give this one more try. So this is summer of 2010. I also decided to invest in a book, and the book that I really enjoyed is Respect the Spindle by Abby Frankmont. And this book, with its pictures and discussion of spinning, and just a few years away from it, something clicked. And so I spun up that first braid, and I got something. It was a little thick. I mean, it was certainly a bulky weight yarn, but I got something that I was willing to call yarn. And I thought, I'll try this one more time. And I bought a braid of fiber, and I did it again, and I did it again. And then it was time for Tour de Fleece over the summer. And I bought a couple more braids, and I spun a couple braids on my spindle during Tour de Fleece. And then I was kind of hooked. So in fall of 2010, I went ahead and I rented a wheel for a while, and Christmas of 2010, well, that's a long story too. I was supposed to get it as a gift, and my husband led me to believe I wasn't going to get it as a gift, so I threw a fit and went out and bought myself a spinning wheel. So yes, I got my wheel in December of 2010, and I have been spinning on it ever since. So I would say, words of advice, I guess, is that if you are interested in spinning, ask someone who is kind of knowledgeable about spinning what the best tools are. Make sure you get yourself a decent tool to start with. Make sure you spend some time studying, or not studying fibers, but make sure you get the right fiber for you. Make sure you get some guidance. I don't know whether you learn best from YouTube tutorials, from watching people do it, or whether you learn best from books, reading, and illustrations. Make sure you get some guidance, and then have a little patience, because it takes a little while to click. I wouldn't have thought that the thing that I hated in probably 2006 or 2007 would become something that I loved so much in 2010 and continue to love. This year will be my 4th spinning anniversary. So, or I guess it already was. So that is an answer to that question. I will definitely answer a few other questions that I received. I'll probably put them towards next week because we're already almost up to 40 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed today. If you have other questions, please ask them. And otherwise, I will say happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I will see you next time.